Hey y'all, this is Sharinda, aka Rinda Insights, here on TikTok, African American History 101, Facing Fear, Overcoming Trauma. This is week 3, and today we're going to talk about the cultural context of fear. On this President's Day, February 17th, when everybody is at work. Yeah, I remember when President's Day was a federal day off. Maybe we ain't take the day off because we ain't got no president. I'm sorry, I had to do it. We're going to go ahead and talk about the cultural context of fear, i.e., of how fear shows up in African Americans, specifically in our culture. I'm going to talk about in the workplace and at home, specifically to women, because, like I said, I can talk about myself. I'm not going to talk about anybody else. Systemic racism is the first one. I remember growing up in Zion, Illinois. Spent my high school years there during the 80s. That was some sugar honey iced tea there. In the midst of a drug epidemic, moved there because gentrification, I guess, was one of the things going on, where they were enticing people to move from the city to the suburbs. And so moving to Zion, Illinois, there was probably like maybe 3% black folk, maybe a little bit more than that. But I know in most of my classes, if there were a class with 40 people in it, there would maybe be one or two black people within that classroom. And African American history was taught by white folk. But anyway, systemic racism made us feel uncomfortable. I remember, I think it was 1986. We were in a park celebrating Independence Day, and some guys rode up on horses, and they killed 2 of my classmates in broad daylight in 1986, which wasn't that long ago. And it was a reminder to all of us that the craziest thing is, though we were stolen to come here, folks still don't want us here all these years later. What? If you would have kept my ancestors on the beach while they were chilling, we wouldn't have these problems. But being a child at that time, 16 years old, and having a fear of things that were already going on, where people would talk down to you. Noticing that as we were taking our test, that some people were at a terrible disadvantage. Now, growing up in Lake County, we in gym, because the culture was predominantly white, about 85% white. We learned how to golf. We learned how to play ice hockey, how to ice skate, badminton, tennis, soccer, skiing. And I think about now, when you go to take the SATs and the ACTs, and they're still systemically, culturally biased. Because if I had grown up in the inner city, no way in the hell I would have known the rules to badminton, the rules to ice hockey, how to ski, and the principles of skiing, the variations of skiing. And those things are still prevalent today, even though they're regurgitated knowledge and they have nothing to do with our intellect, but they still are perpetuated in various tests and in the door of you getting somewhere. You know, when you get to that door that's going to change the whole trajectory of your life, you found this wall that is not a generalized wall, whereas there's some concepts that you've never been exposed to. It's almost like us asking white people, you know, when you go into certain communities, how do you navigate around that community without getting harmed? You know, do you know what watch your six and keep your head on a swivel mean? Well, that's not a bad example. I was getting ready to go into drugs, but they know more about drugs than we do, which is another systemic racist ploy. And I'm not saying this to be judgmental, because I love all people. If you look at my skin color, I'm a part of all people, and I have no hatred for anyone. I'm just talking about societal things that happen because people have hatred for my skin color. Moving into the late 80s, whereas if you were selling crack or got caught with a certain amount of rots on you, you would actually get more time than if you were doing pure cocaine, because pure cocaine was considered to be an elitist drug. Drug is a drug, right? Even going down to heroin. A few months ago, I was listening to a show, and there was actually a government official, I believe it was a congressman, talking about a young lady who had OD'd on opiates in New York. And he was putting pressure on for people to stop saying that she had overdosed. He said that she was using drugs recreationally. She was not a dope thing because she had a good job. She was a doctor, lawyer, something like that. And she happened to be a white woman. A drug doesn't have any shade of color on it. You know, all of a sudden there is this mass organization against drugs, you know, and people are organizing saying, oh my God, the fentanyl, oh my God, the heroin, when it was just hitting people who were Hispanic, when it was just hitting people who were Black. Didn't nobody give a damn about fentanyl or the heroin that they would put fentanyl in. It wasn't until it started tapering over into their communities where it was seen, because it's been in their communities, that all of a sudden, oh my goodness, you know, the fentanyl is coming over the border. It's been coming over the border. Systemic racism, to make it seem as though it was us, until my grandma used to say, you walking around with your shirt collar out, people can see what's really going on. And we're moving into a world where people are walking around with the shirt tails out, with the shirt collars out, and people are being exposed because everything that they pointed out as being bad is being reflected in their culture. Systemic racism has been going on since the transatlantic slave trade. And even before the transatlantic slave trade, where there was mass slavery, there was still slaves being held. So racism has been going on since the beginning of time, when people of color were thought as less than men, to the point where people would kill us way back in the day in the 15th, 16th century, 17th century, as though we were cattle, and eat us. Look it up. It's a fact. And they didn't see themselves as doing anything wrong because we were not human. Now, these same non-humans are being attacked on DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. How can we be non-human, but we're qualified, come fully qualified to do jobs that some people could do if they put their mind to it and stop feeling as though entitlement was going to carry them through. Systemic racism is volatile. It's dangerous. And now people are acting like they noticing that it's two-sided. And I'm getting off into something else, but DEI was never made for people of color. DEI benefited non-melanist women who have been dogged out since the beginning of time. And I say dogged out since the beginning of time because you forced in marriage because you couldn't even own property back in the day. Racism doesn't benefit anybody. Racism is divisive. Racism is destructive. Racism kills morally, emotionally, physically, and mentally. And it brings about fear. Now we're living in a day where as we know better, we do better. And as a person of color, I can say, because we know what it is, we've pointed it out, and we know how to work through it and work around it because it shows up everywhere we go. It's no longer a concern of ours. The only concern that we have is to teach those around us so that they will not get caught up in that game. The game of a black man just walking or driving, having to have a specific police etiquette when he gets out of the car. But now we have our Latino friends and the game of them just walking into Pilsen in Little Village in Chicago and having other Latinos who work for ICE to pull them over and ask them where their papers are. And people who were born here having to prove that they have a right to be here. Systemic racism runs very deep. And I thought I was going to have time to get to another point, but I'll come back tomorrow and record another video. What to do about systemic racism. I want everyone to take a look in a mirror. Notice your color. Right now, I'm talking to my people of color. Whether you be a Latino, whether you be Indian, whether you be Native African, or whether you be Black. We are all people of color. And until we stop being racist among ourselves because of our complexion of our skin, there will continue to be racism amongst us. If we can't get along with each other, we can't expect anybody else to get along with us. How can we educate it when we torn amongst ourselves? When we uncomfortable amongst ourselves? But we go to the family reunion and we see people of every color. And tell my non-melanist friends, I just want y'all to know, we did not ask for this situation. We are here. We're not going anywhere. We are not afraid. We are educated. And we are living in an era when we're woke. I will talk to you all tomorrow. God bless. I love you. Peace.